Welcome to For Good Measure, an interview series celebrating diverse composers and other creative artists, sponsored by a grant from the California Arts Council. I'm Nanette McGuinness, Artistic Executive Director of Ensemble for these times. In this week's episode, we continue our Da Capo Conversations, a mini-series where we'll be giving familiar segments a topical twist. Today we revisit Darian Donovan Thomas's and Nina Shekhar's perspectives on their musical journey and background. Here's what Darian Donovan Thomas had to say.
Since I was a little kid, there was always music happening in the house. As I said before, my parents had a small label and my dad was a producer. Mm-hmm. And so I remember being in elementary school and hearing my dad mix on like his speakers right next door to my room. Or having nights where I was in a studio probably way too late, but also like it really prepared me for an artist lifestyle. And then having to go to school the next day. So music was kind of just always there and art was always there. And I knew it would always be something I would do. And I tried a couple of different things. I was in choir for a while. I was in a gospel choir for a while. I was in ballet. And then finally in middle school, there was this weird loophole where if you like took a fine arts elective, you didn't have to take PE. And I was like, that's yes. obviously what I'm going to do. And serendipitously at the same time, I was watching Red Violin with my mom. Like I had the course card in my hand and I was like, which elective is the violin in? And she was like, I think that's orchestra. I was like, great. And I signed up and it kind of very serendipitously worked out. And then, I don't know, I just, like, once I had an instrument in my hands, I started improvising a lot, and it kind of just never occurred to me that composing was something I couldn't do because my dad would do it all the time, you know? Mm-hmm. I was like, oh yeah, you just, like, make a song. That's just a thing you can do. And I started doing it. And I think I got super serious about music sometime in early high school, when I discovered, like, I did a real deep dive on Tchaikovsky and got really obsessive and, like, learned all of it. Learned, like, the reasons he wrote all his symphonies, learned about the violin concerto being gifted to one of his students that he was in love with, learned about Nadezhda von Meck, learned about the patrons, the conspiracy theories about his death, him seeing his mother die of cholera, like, how sad that whole circle is, his queerness at that time. And also, like, him being a part of really creating the Russian sound by basically doing what the Neumann people and what Angelica does of, like, integrating the pop music of his time, like folk music, into this classical scene, and therefore creating the sound of Russia, right? Along with the other artists who were doing that at the time. And I was like, oh yeah, I think I want to be serious about this. Like, researching this, being obsessed with this feels really natural. And so I want to do this. And then later on, as I was getting closer to college auditions and stuff, I realized there was a really brilliant violinist at my high school, Nancy Zhao, last name Zhou. She's amazing. She's still amazing. She's still performing with everyone. But by that time, junior year in high school, she'd already performed with the Beijing Symphony Orchestra. She'd already soloed with lots of orchestras around the world, participated in the Sibelius competition, the Tchaikovsky competition, kind of intense. And I was like, okay, if that's my competition, I would much rather do composition instead, because I think I'm more willing to fight for composition than for violin. Also, like, I could kind of tell, I was like, if I major in violin, like, I think I might end up hating the instrument. So I need to not do that to myself. And I think I could handle, like, people giving me really heavy critique on my writing and that making it better. Whereas I think I want to sound more like myself on violin instead. So did that, got into school, wrote way too much while I was in school, and have kind of continued that, where I still feel like I probably write too much and I'm always too busy. But at least now it's balanced out with touring with a lot of bands and stuff like that too.
Here's what Nina Shekhar had to say.
Oh, definitely. It was quite a winding road, I would say. When I was a kid, I grew up playing piano, eventually the flute, like in my school band program. And I remember with that, especially like when I started piano, like my brother is older than me. He was taking piano lessons, and I would just sit in the background, kind of in envy, like wanting to also do that. And I eventually, as I started playing piano, I knew that I had this kind of instinct as a composer. Like I would write these little pieces at the piano, and I was excited about that. And then I was always very ambitious, so that when I went to middle school and joined our middle school band program, like I was like, I'm going to write a piece for concert band for us to play, like having this kind of mentality of like, oh, I want to write something too. And, eventually when I was deciding on college programs, I really didn't think at first that I was going to major in music. I think I thought like maybe I would minor. I always thought, my parents had this dream of me going to medical school. Like I really thought I was going to do some sort of science degree, and maybe do a minor in music. Like I didn't think I was going to actually try to pursue it professionally. And then I don't know, it's just like the more I did it, the more I realized that I really loved it. And I wanted to like actually try to put myself out there and study it in college and try to pursue something professionally, or at least make that like have the chance to make that decision later. And so I ended up doing a double major. I double majored, as you said, in chemical engineering and composition, and it was really a challenge. To be honest, I would say the engineering major, I mean, I grew to love it, and I do have a wide range of interests, but to be honest, it was to make my parents less afraid. They were so terrified just what would happen financially if I majored in music. And I was like, no, you need to have a way to get a job. Like engineering, you'll probably get a job. So I did that, kind of to satisfy them. But then eventually, as I started finding more success as a composer, I think they came to terms with it and thought, okay, I think she could actually be successful if she wanted to. And then that's kind of my path. And then I eventually just like made a decision. I finished both degrees, but then I made a decision that I wanted to really pursue composition as my main profession. And then I kind of put my engineering degree to the side and haven't really looked back at it. But but I am grateful I had that experience, because I really, I think all of these interests that I had, or, these different fields of study that I was exposed to, have definitely informed the way I think, as an artist. And, just the way I look at the world. I feel like engineers, the way they analyze problems is like so specific, and they understand like the consequences of actions in a different way, in a much more like tangible way than maybe artists do. But artists also understand the emotional side of things. So I think seeing both sides of that has kind of definitely informed my practice and my goals as an artist.
Thank you for listening to For Good Measure's Da Capo Conversations, and a special thank you to our guests for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast by clicking on the subscribe button, and support us by sharing it with your friends, posting about it on social media, and leaving us a rating and a review. To learn more about E4TT, our concert season online and in the Bay Area, or to make a tax-deductible donation, please visit us at www.e4tt.org. This podcast is made possible in part by a grant from the California Arts Council and generous donors like you. For Good Measure is produced by Nanette McGuinness and Ensemble for These Times, and designed by Brennan Stokes, with special thanks to co-producer and audio engineer Stephanie M. Neumann. Remember to keep supporting equity in the arts, and tune in next week for Good Measure.